Hey guys, Terence here from Neptune Systems with another edition of Let's Talk Reef. I want to thank you guys for joining me. We did skip a week. A little bit of business travel got in the way there. Hopefully some of you guys might have seen my trip out to Hong Kong. I did a little impromptu Let's Talk Reef out at some of the Hong Kong Goldfish Market fish stores. So if you haven't seen that, go out to our Facebook page and look up that video. It's kind of interesting to see how they do reef keeping in the rest of the world. Anyway, I want to basically, have another great episode here. I've got some things to share with you. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody, as always, for joining us for these shows. It is why we keep putting them on. We keep getting more and more people to come and see the Let's Talk Reef. So we're going to keep doing them, and we're going to try as best as possible to bring them to you every other Tuesday. What that means is 2 weeks on February 12th. At 5 p.m. is going to be our next one. So mark your calendars now, set up your reminders. It looks like everybody that needs to be in a Let's Talk Reef episode is going to be available on the 12th. So we should be able to do them, and every other week we're hoping to be able to put one out. As always, put your comments and questions in. I do have a little bit of a technical difficulty with my comments and questions with the streaming, so when we can, I'll grab Paul's phone and I'll look through Paul's phone and see some of the questions that you guys have and start answering the questions from there. And then before the next one, hopefully I can figure out what's going on with our Restream IO streamer that we use to get this out to both YouTube and to Facebook. We'll figure it out, and we'll make do without it for now. Also, another thing very important here is if you want to know that these things are happening, these Let's Talk Reviews, or maybe even you want to see the impromptu ones like when I was in Hong Kong, then you want to go in Facebook, if you're a Facebook user, and you want to select from the top where it says following. You want to select that it says see first, and then you want to say that you want to get the notification. Then, when I do any kind of the live streams for Neptune Systems, it'll pop up right there on your notifications on your phone if you have them turned on. Likewise, you can also subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you're a YouTuber and you like to do all of this on YouTube, we always stream to both Facebook and to YouTube, so you can do that. And when you do that, if you select this bell here at the bottom, you will also get a notification straight to your phone the moment that we go live. So I encourage you guys to do that as well. Now, first thing we're going to talk about is the news. What's going on with Neptune Systems? Well, the first thing I want to talk about is the Neptune Systems World Tour. We have a bunch of tour dates that we're going to be going to places all across the United States this year. We've just more or less, I think we might have 3 or 4 more shows that we're going to do, but this is pretty much going to be it for the year. We'll go back over it again, but the first place that I want to talk about that we're going to go to is Dallas, Texas. The first big one, I should say, the big events of the year. This year is the year of the Aquarium event because there's more Aquarium events than there ever has been, and they are of an incredible quality. The first big event that we're going to be going to is in Dallas, Texas. It's called Aquashella. And this event is put on by a bunch of crazy guys, if you ask me. It's rave meets fish show, and it's not just fish, it's art, and it's not just fresh or saltwater fish, it's freshwater fish. So it's an amalgam of all of these different kinds of things and lots of neon, and it's definitely looks like a really cool show. I did not go last year, but we did have, I think Paul went out or Vincent went out and attended an Aquashella in Chicago. And we'll be doing that one as well this year. So we'll have an actual booth ourselves in both of these events. It's really exciting for me to see something in Dallas for you guys that live out that way, because there hasn't been something out there since, I think, really the next wave that the Dallas Marine Aquarium Society used to do. So looking forward to seeing all of you guys out for Aquashella in Dallas and Chicago. Obviously, these are available. You can find these guys on Facebook and on the web, etc. if you want to go attend. The next one is Reefapalooza. Now, Reefapalooza is the event that's been around for a long time. Greg Carroll would get mad at me if I didn't say the exact number of years, but I don't know, maybe it's 12 years, maybe it's 15 years, I don't know that it matters. But Reefapalooza started in Southern California, and we've done it pretty much since its inception. And then it branched out to Orlando, Florida, where the guys from Worldwide Corals actually put on the show out there. And then it branched out to New York, and then this year it's branching out again to another city, to Chicago later in the year. So that means there's going to be 2 great shows in Chicago this year, like 6 months apart. And I mean, go to both of them. Why not? I would. If I lived in Chicago, I have to go to both of them because we're going to have a presence there. So check out the Reefapaloozas if you're in one of these cities or close to one of these cities and you want to come see us, you want to see the various people from Neptune Systems, including myself. Ask questions. We're going to be there. We'll have the gear there through all of our dealers in those cities. And yeah, it's going to be great. Then the next one is MACNA. Now, MACNA is the show of shows, right? This is where the serious enthusiasts go, not just to go buy corals, but also to get information from some of the greats in the reef keeping hobby. There's always great speakers there, great information to share. All the major vendors are at MACNA, and it's always held in a different city every year. This year it's going to be in Orlando, and it's going to be right off the Disney Resort at the Swan and the Dolphin Resort. I really love going to Florida. I love when we had the Miami event. I think the Orlando event is going to be equally great. I know there was one, I believe, before in Orlando, but that was before my time, so I didn't get to go to that one. But you guys might have seen, we do a pretty big deal for the MACNAs. We have our own little event on Friday morning. It's not so little anymore. We had over 400 people, I think, last year at MACNA. We have a lot of fun. We give away a lot of swag and prizes. So if you want to go to a great event, and even if you're not in the Orlando area, fly in. It's a multi-day event. Really, really encourage you to go. So if you are one of these people that do not live near any one of these and you can't make it to MACNA, we are going to be at all of these other events. Now, they're kind of small on the screen here. Even I can't see them very easily, but I'm just going to rip right through all of them. We've got ReefWorks Expo coming up next month in February. Frag Farmers Market. Reef Stock. I don't know. Maybe we might do Reef Stock. Maybe we won't. We don't know yet. Niagara Coral Show. Reef Dreams. Aquashella. Reefapalooza. The CMAS Frag Swap, TCMAS, Reef Currents, Keep on Reefing, Keep on Reefing, yeah. Keep on Reefing, Reef Smart, the Lyra Frag Swap, Reefapalooza in New York, Aquashella, Reefapalooza California, MACNA in Florida, in Orlando, as I spoke about, Philly Splash, the Aquatic Experience, still kind of deciding on that one, don't know for sure. And then Reefapalooza in Chicago. So we have a really full calendar this year. If you want to come out and see the people from Neptune Systems ask questions, this is the place to do it. We love interacting with all of you. Please come out, see us, and support these shows too, because they're great. I mean, if you haven't been to one of these events, go this year. All right. So now, what is it that you really want to hear about? Okay, probably. Again, more stuff about the Trident. Of course, that's, I'm not seeing all the questions roll up here. As I said, we got a little technical difficulty, but I see Paul across the room smiling at me. And, for the last few of these Let's Talk Reef, I've been talking about how we've been running them in the office, under various tanks that we have and various test setups, and how we were prepping a bunch of them to go out, right? Because there's this thing that we have that's called Neptune Systems Insiders. And for those of you that don't know, we have many hundreds of people who are on a list with all sorts of information about the kind of reef that they keep, what kind of corals, what they enjoy. All of this information is put into a huge database. And then depending on the project, we pick certain people that we contact and have them get have the ability to have products before everybody else and put them through that last final mile of, is this got the polish on it that it needs to have? We're in this phase right now with the Trident. It's not for sale yet, but it is in the hands of reef keepers who you will see, and probably have seen many of them already, out on the internet that are testing them. One of them, I just wanted to show at least one of these guys, is Marcin Smock out in New York. He's out in Brooklyn, New York. He has a beautiful reef tank, and he has one right now that he's putting it through the paces. All of the people who are running the Trident are really kind of expert reef keepers. These are guys right now in the NSI that really can put products through through their paces. And usually when we do the NSI, we also have a multi-stage process. So there's not only the experts that we get. If you haven't been picked for NSI yet, it doesn't mean that you're out of the picture. It just means that maybe you'll have another chance here in another month or so when we pull off another group of people and try to get them to really push it even further. So don't lose hope. You still might be picked for NSI if you've already applied. If you haven't applied, I'm sorry. The application process is closed for now. It'll open up for maybe another project later in the year. But if you got in there, then there's still a possibility. Now, there's a lot of questions that have been coming up out on the forums. Some people looking where to buy it, how much it's going to cost. And obviously, the biggest question, when can I get one? We'd like to be able to give you a date. I think I say this every time. We're not giving out dates yet, simply because we don't know what we don't know when we get this into the hands of these expert reef keepers and see exactly what many more people find out as they're running it. So far, everything is looking brilliant. We're loving everything that we're seeing, and we're already preparing more NSI systems to go out. That said, it doesn't mean that it's going to be a week. It doesn't mean it's going to be a month. It doesn't mean it's going to be 2 months. It's going to be what it's going to be. But we are pushing everything forward. So the moment that we feel it's ready to go out, we can kick off production and go. We don't have to wait, 6 months for parts to come in. We're, ready to go. I mean, I have down here, if you looked at the Easter egg that came on Instagram before this, you'll see one of the boxes actually that we're going to be using. So this is a product that's real. We saw a lot of jokes about unicorns and Sasquatch and whatnot, and those are fun, and rightly so, right? But it's a real product, and it's in the hands of the NSI guys now. So look for it out there, on the internet. How about, before I go into the next subject, why don't I get a couple of questions? Paul, do you have any that you think? You can read off camera. You can break the fourth wall, buddy.
A lot of excitement about the shows. People want to know if there's been any specific holdups with the Trident so far in NSI.
None since the last time we spoke at MACNA. It's going along as we've expected since MACNA.
Swimmingly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm going to talk about here in a second, before I go on to the next thing about the Trident. I'm running it myself, and I've seen some amazing things by putting this product on my reef tank. For those of you that don't know, I run a 425-gallon reef tank, so I'm one of the big testers of the product as well. No other big questions? Okay. All right, so I want to give you guys an insight to one of the things that happened to me over the last week on my aquarium and with the Trident, because I think this really shows something really cool, which is you sometimes don't realize how important it is to have this real-time information. I was away, as I said, I was away in China, and right about the day I was flying home, I got a instant message from another person on the R&D team who said, "Hey, what's going on with your tank? The alkalinity is it's dropping like a rock." I'm like, "Gosh, I don't know. I'll have to look at it when I get home." So I got home and found out that the feed pump to my calcium reactor was having problems, and it was only spitting out about half. Maybe even a little bit less than half of the effluent that it should be, and that was making obviously my alkalinity drop. Now, what did I decide to do? Well, it was time for a water change anyway, and a water change is a great way to lift up my alkalinity because I generally run around 7.5, 7.8, and the water mix that I use is up in the 9s. So I figured, well, this is a good way to get it back to where it needs to be. I fixed the pump. And you can see that right there on the graph as the Trident was testing the alkalinity. Well, when I did the water change, I made the mistake of not putting enough water in, and the next day my water level was low, and I thought, well, I'm not even going to look at the salinity. I'll just go ahead and top it off with the hose that I have in my big water storage downstairs. So I flipped the valve, brought the 225-gallon sump up by 1.5 inches or so, And I was like, whoa, okay, this is, this is not good. I've now kind of diluted the tank. It's still not rising what it should be. I need to get the salinity up in the tank because it's at now 32.7 or 33 ppt. So I figured, okay, well, how can I get the salinity up? Well, I got a big tank. I'll just start throwing some salt into the filter sock. I know most of you probably think, oh, are you crazy? You can't do that. But with 1,200 gallons per hour coming down the pipe, it was no problem. I just dumped a bunch of salt into the filter sock, and lo and behold, you see the next rise there. That's the rise on the alkalinity based around the salinity rising up. And the calcium and the magnesium graphs obviously did the same thing. So it's an incredible tool that I've already got practical use out of, because if I didn't catch this drop until my next manual alkalinity change, think of how far it would have had to have dropped, probably to the point where I noticed stress on the corals rather than my next actual test. And then I would test, and then I would find it was low, and then I would add the alkalinity back in. My tank would be under stress. I'd then have to do multiple manual tests to see how far did it come up. Did it come up enough? Is it dosing enough now? So the practical use of this real-time monitoring is amazing. And as a reef keeper, it just puts a huge smile on your face. And Paul and I were actually going over some of his charts from earlier this week. You could see when he did his water change, and you could see all these things. So I can't wait to get it into all of your hands. I hate to tease you guys like that, but I want you to know that it is a real product, that people are testing them, and we're doing everything we possibly can to get them out to market as quickly as possible. And I'll end the Trident talk on that. Okay, what's next? Okay, next thing I want to talk about is heaters, okay? That's why I've got these heaters here. It's one piece of equipment that nearly every aquarium has. I know there'll be people commenting on there, oh, I never use a heater, my house is the right temperature. Okay, I get it, but that's not most people. So I want to talk a little bit about heaters today, and then Paul is going to come on during the Tech Corner and talk about how to best configure heaters and even a fan in your Apex with some really cool little things that I'm not going to ruin the surprise here. First of all, when you have a heater, there's lots of heaters available, but they basically fall into three types. We have the glass heater, which you've seen around for, I don't know, this has to be, 40 years or something. They've had a heater that's similar to this. Looks very old school. It's, fragile, it's glass. Not as fragile as a lot of people think, believe it or not. It can take a pretty good racking. Then you have these solid state, some of them have like a gel in them with a heating panel inside, type ones with an electronic thermostat. And then you have I don't have one here, so I'll have to show an image. You have the titanium type heaters, often with an external heater controller on them. So these are really the three kinds of heaters, and a lot of people have different preferences for them, but there also depends on your particular use case. For instance, if you have a nano tank, it's not really going to be very easy for you to use a big, gigantic one of these, or even sometimes the smaller 50-watt ones aren't as easy to use as, say, this guy. On the other hand, if you have a gigantic tank, you'd need a lot of these, because I think they max out, 250 or 300 watts to put into a big tank. In a medium-sized tank, you may need 300 watts of power, because the rule of thumb is 3 watts per gallon of water. So you have a 100-gallon tank, the sump's not that big, you need 300 watts. This is a 200-watt heater, so the 300 watts are even a little bit longer, probably not going to fit in there. So there are some practical considerations, and then there are the considerations of the actual thermostats in them. And BRS has done some really good videos on studying the heaters. They just had one recently talking about heaters. Some of these thermostats have an off and on temperature range of, plus or minus a 1.5 degrees, 2 degrees, like these guys. And some of them have a really, really good tight control, like these guys. These particular types of heaters have gotten a bad rap over time. I can't necessarily, I've run one in a nano for a long, long time, but I do know that some people have had a problem with these splitting open and affecting their livestock. These obviously can crack, but I think when they do, they fail. You kind of know they fail, and they don't really ruin the water These kind, not necessarily this brand, but these kind, do often have stuff inside them that is not really good for the aquarium when they fail. So that is a consideration because they have broken open some of these type of heaters. The titanium heaters usually are pretty reliable, but often what happens with them too is the element ends up failing because the quality, in order to get the price down, the quality is not quite as high as they should be. Now, when it comes to the titanium heaters too, one of the things that I like is that they have an external thermistor or thermostat, right? It's got this extra wire, that extra pigtail you see in the picture. Believe it or not, to get the cost down, some of these heaters now come with the element connected directly to the thermostat, and the thermistor, or the thing that tells the temperature, is inside the same piece where the heating element is. And so they don't really work that well, but they are economical. Now, what else? Oh, the thermostats too. I have a picture in here, or at least I thought I did. There we go. So one of the things to think of too, and why you want to have an Apex a lot of times if you're going to use this kind of a heater specifically, is they use a bimetal thermostat. And these things, when they go off and on, you know, they end up arcing at some point, and they end up welding themselves shut into the on position, and then your heater goes forever. This is what has cooked so many tanks of people who do not have, for instance, secondary heater control like an Apex to control their heater. So, let's see, what's next? Oh, multiple heaters. For me, if you have a larger aquarium and you need, say, 300 watts for a 100-gallon aquarium, as I discussed, I would rather have 250-watt heaters in there than have one 300-watt. Or if I needed an 800 watts of heat, I'd want to have maybe three 300 watts available. The reason for that is, number one, if you do have one of them fail, the other two are still going to be heating the tank, and you're not going to drop off the temperature as quickly. Also, they create a level of redundancy. If you only needed 600 watts and you could put 3 of them in there, now you've even got more redundancy. You can also layer them, so you can have one come on till it's a certain temperature, and have the other one come on when it needs a little bit more. There's lots of things you can do with multiple heaters, and there's a lot of opinion on this out there, and I'd encourage you to go out and read the forums or the online groups and whatnot. But I have in my tank, I have four heaters in a 650 gallons of water, but the sump is below the house. Now, the one thing I really want to stress with you guys, really stress, is if you're going to use a heater, okay, it's very common out there, especially as a cost saving kind of thing, to buy one of these heating elements that are meant to be plugged into a controller like this, a temperature controller. But they get bought, and then the person has an Apex, right? And they plug it directly into an outlet on an Apex. And the Apex will control that heating element just fine, but you haven't bought yourself any more redundancy than if you had just bought the heater with its own thermostat. The idea of running an Apex for a lot of things is to add that extra level of redundancy, not take it away. So for me, the key for me is, you never want to run, let me get this in here, a heating element with an Apex without some other thermostat in between. I know a lot of people do it, and a lot of people do it safely. One of the reasons, above all, is if somebody gets into let's say your iPad, let's say your 6-year-old is playing games and says, wow, what's this Apex Fusion? This looks like a fun game. And they go in there, they slide the sliders over, and they hit it to on. Well, you have no other protection now. That heating element is on. And you get alerts on your tank, hopefully, from your temperature alerts, but it is not going to shut itself off when it's switched to on. So please, if you're doing this now, think about getting another heater controller in between the Apex and your heating element. Okay, now, lifespan. One of the things that I just saw on a BRS video that I liked that I really hadn't thought of is heaters. Heaters like this aren't very expensive, and believe it or not, this is my preferred heater. I have 3 of them just like this in my aquarium, and I have, I think, 1 titanium heater. These things have a lifespan, and it's a limited lifespan. Everything does, and the manufacturers warranty these for some of them 6 months, some of them a year, some of them 2 years. For the cost that these have and what they can cause problems in your aquarium, Ryan on BRS made a great point, which is, why go so much longer than what the manufacturer even will risk on this? If you have one that has a 1-year warranty, maybe at a year and a half, maybe 2 years, maybe you really should be just thinking about let's just get rid of that one. Let's add another $30 heater and amortize the cost over my reef keeping time. It's really some food for thought, in my opinion. As I said, this is my heater of choice. I like these. They're not sexy. They don't have great thermostats. Paul's going to talk about where to set some of the thermostat stuff in a little bit. But this is definitely my go-to heater. This is way more sexy. I get it. And then the last thing on the heaters that I want to mention is there's 2 schools of thought when controlling a heater with the Apex. And Paul's going to talk about at least one of those. But one of the thoughts is that if you have a heater with a great ability to hold temperature very close to the set point, if I'm remembering correctly, these hold the set point, the temperature really close to the set point in some of the tests that BRS has done. Some people will tell you, set this for the temperature that you want and set the Apex as your backup, okay? Set it at a higher temperature. So if this does fail, the Apex will be the fail-safe. And the only downside to that is if you wanted to change your temperature, your actual set temperature on your tank, you'd have to do it manually. The other option, the one that I do, that I think most people do, is you set your aquarium's heater a degree or 2 degrees higher than you want the set point in your Apex, and you let your Apex turn on and off the heater. So that's something to definitely think about. There's a lot of pros and cons to both, doing it both ways. I know Paul is going to come on here and talk about some others. Do we have any more questions, Paul, before we kick into the tech corner? No more questions? Okay. Nothing good?
Someone wants to know if they should replace their Apex gear every year.
Oh, that's clever. Should you replace your Apex gear? I'll tell you what, I'll put the sales hat on and say, not every year, how about every 16 months? Do it for me. No, absolutely not. But there are things that wear out. Even in an energy bar, it does have relays in it. Paul will talk about that a little bit. And so there are mechanical parts, even in electronics, that do wear out. All right, guys, well, we're going to kick into Tech Corner now. We'll be back in just a second. All right, we're back with Paul in the Tech Corner.
Hey, Terence, how's it going?
Happy New Year.
Hey, Happy New Year to you. Is this the
Oh,
first
no, it's
one?
our second one.
The
Sorry.
second one. We were in the lobby last time.
Yes, that's why it feels like the first.
It was the Trident episode.
Yes.
So we answered a lot of questions about the Trident.
It feels like the first one of this year because we're back in the studio.
Yeah,
we gave the people a little teaser, showed what is kind of behind the scenes.
Oh, the Instagram that you posted?
Yeah, the Instagram.
I like that. We get a lot in here, guys. I will say that.
It's a very small room.
Yes.
It is very small.
Anyways, first off, if you guys have any tech questions, be sure to ask those. We'll stop.
I'll watch this on here.
We'll stop and answer those, as time permits and things like that. And in general, if there's things that you guys want to know more about, I have some great topics planned in the coming weeks. But if there's something that you think, that's getting glossed over, just leave the comments on the YouTube page, on the Facebook page. We go back and read those.
Absolutely.
And if a lot of people are liking a certain conversation, that's a conversation that we'll have.
Yeah, So make a suggestion. Say, hey, could you guys do an episode on how to do this with the Apex? And we'll see who chimes in on it.
Okay, great. So I hear it's a little bit cold in certain parts of the country right now.
Just a little.
Yeah. Not here.
We
Don't
would never
worry.
know here.
Don't worry. We don't know anything about the cold here in Northern California.
We watch it and go, why?
Yeah.
Why?
I myself, I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Indiana, and so I'm aware of this. But the temperatures that you people are experiencing there in the Midwest right now, my heart goes out to you. Those are
Brutal.
brutally cold. So that's one of the reasons why Terence is talking about heaters this week. And I thought I would go into a little bit on the control and trying to keep in. Temperature is probably one of the most important things to set up correctly on your Apex.
I believe, and I've written this in articles and in talks that I've given, Paul, that temperature control is the number one reason people leave the hobby.
Yeah.
So, when you come home from a trip, or for some people in a smaller aquarium, they come home from dinner with their wife or their husband, and they open the door and they get that wave of smell.
I've been there, my friend.
And this is after they've been already on Facebook showing off their beautiful acros and everything else, and they come in and they see that. They're just like, I'm done.
It's hard, and I think a lot of people don't even know that temperature is maybe what gets them out of the hobby. You're thinking of almost catastrophic events,
yes,
right? A lot of people don't understand, why they're never really successful with their tanks, and that could be for any variety of reasons. But if you're having a 3 or 4 degree temperature swing per day,
if you're not using, for instance, an Apex, and you're using the thermostat in this particular, type of heater, you're going to have big swings in the temperature,
especially in that time of the year when it's hot during the day. You're not running the AC yet in the home, and it's cool at night. That's hard on your reef.
Yeah.
And that's something that the
Apex, it's getting up to like 82 and a half during the day, right? And then at night it goes all the way back down to 77, 78. And the animals, even us, right? As the temperature changes, it consumes more calories. We're not as effective.
And the temperature in the ocean does not do that, guys. Right. It stays pretty stable, maybe goes up, maybe goes down. It's on an upward trend, as we well know, but it is. It's one of the things I think gets well overlooked. So this Tech Corner, I'm going to be showing you how to set up temperature control, both the warming and the cooling side of that, and more importantly, how to protect you from failure in your tank, on the warming side of it.
Cool.
Okay.
That sounds good, Paul.
So first off, I want to get started. Just kind of get an image going of what ideal control is. Yeah. So if you can go over
you up in the demo mode.
Into our Brady Bunch mode.
Let's see if it works.
Oh,
kind of.
Yeah, there it is.
And there.
All right. So I got an image here of a thermostat, right?
Okay.
And first off, let's talk about the ideal temperature. There's a lot of different opinions on what that is. Some people like to run really warm tanks. Some people like to run really cool tanks. By far, I think the most average temperature is between 78 to 79 in the
I would agree with you.
There are benefits to running a warmer tank, right? The benefits of running a warmer tank is you're typically going to have higher growth and metabolic rates, which means that you're going to get more coral growth and things like that.
If you want to have clownfish that spawn, for instance, you're going to need to have like 80-degree water to do that.
Exactly. And so that's an important reason why you keep it warm. Now there are some downsides of that, right? You're going to be using more power to keep that tank warm, and
that's an issue for me. I mean, I run through the winter like 74 and a half, because if I have to keep it at 76, it's like
it's
lots
another
of money.
$100 a month, right? On your tank. And then, other downside of that is if something does go wrong and and it does get over hot, you have a lot less distance before it gets danger.
Right. You have a buffer.
Right. I would say the danger sets in, at that 84, 85, if not even cooler than that. Discus tanks are obviously going to be warmer, but we're more focused on the salt side of it. There are benefits also running a cooler tank too. So meaning temperature around 75, 76. At those rates, you're going to get a much higher rate of dissolved oxygen.
Okay.
Right? So that means there's more oxygen content in the water at those rates. You get slower metabolic growth and things like that. But the benefit of that is if you were to lose power for some reason or another, well, then you have a lot more oxygen in your water at that point.
Right?
Yes, you have more time, essentially. And it's kind of funny how much oxygen does improve. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but the difference between 79 and 76, it's a significant amount of dissolved oxygen.
Well, we have for the amount of stuff we have in an aquarium, we have such a small amount of water compared to like what's available in the ocean. So things happen really fast.
And so the time from where the fish are on the side, laying on the sand and things like that, it's a little bit longer when you do keep a cooler tank.
Okay.
Right? But for the purposes of today, I'm gonna go for about average at 78.
I think on a reef-to-reef survey they did, I think that was pretty much the spot where everybody had to.
Yeah,
exactly. Most people centered right around that 78.
Right. So not to go off topic or anything, but what's an ideal temperature can be debated forever. But anyways, so the range there that you'd want to control to is basically you want to keep the tank in between about 77.5 and about 78.5. I wouldn't recommend a much narrower range than that, because at that point things are just going to be turning on and off so quickly. The precision of the temperature probe is about 0.2 or so. So the difference between 78 and 77.8, there really isn't that big a difference.
Okay.
So when you're controlling at a range smaller than the precision, you really don't know.
You don't know if it's real or it's not real.
Exactly. So in that temperature range, if we were controlling to that, we're going to have our heater turn on at about 77.5. Okay, so it'll turn on at about 77.4 once it falls below 77.5. And we want to typically keep that on to just above our ideal temperature, which is 78. So I would turn that off at 78.1. Okay. And then if you were to be chilling the water or keeping the water cool with a fan or a chiller, right, you'd probably turn that on about 78.5 and have that turn off about 77.9.
Okay.
Again, to that same kind of idea of...
You mean the other way around, right?
Have it turn on at 78.5. And this is a great thing to mention. If you are having issues with a warm tank, if you're in Florida right now, or in the summer, right, a great way to keep that water cooler is just to put a box fan or a small desk fan.
Simple fan.
Over your sump, right? Have that turn on and off based on the temperature. It does evaporative cooling at that point. So great way to go there.
Oh yeah, you can drop 3 or 4 degrees easily with a simple fan. And I tell people all the time, I say, even if you don't have a temperature problem now, to ensure against it, put a fan in there, set up the Apex to turn it on when you get to that hot range, and then if you're away from home and you do have one of these problems, you have that backup thing just waiting there to take control and give you that 3 to 4 degrees and just buys you that much more time for somebody to get over to the house.
Exactly. And you'll notice in this too, right, these aren't going to be fighting each other, right? The heater's really never going to be on when the fan's on.
There's no overlap.
There's no overlap there. We just have that 1.1, but they're already off in those conditions as well. Okay, and then finally we want to set up our alert parameters. You want to set that up a couple degrees above and below your ideal temperature. So I just arbitrarily kind of chose about 79.7 and 76.3 in this.
Now some people want it a little bit closer, but you don't want to get too close because you don't want to get these false positives on your alerts. Paul would probably make it a little closer than that, but I think everybody's got their own kind of place to be.
Right. I know when I get concerned, and I know much above 80. And much below 76. In this situation, I'd probably be concerned. You never want the boy who cries wolf syndrome.
Absolutely.
Either. You want those notifications to matter. So if you're one of those Apex users right now that are just getting a lot of notifications and alerts, break out those tolerances. If you find that you're getting a lot of set off statements in your alerts, which I could do maybe a whole episode at this at some point. If you're getting a lot of set offs, it's because your tolerances on your alerts are too low, and by the point that the alarm gets sent, right, that alert's no longer true, and that's why you're getting that set off statement.
With no statement that says what happened.
Yeah, exactly. So mostly make those notifications matter, right? So if you're getting a lot of notifications now, make them meaningful. Okay, so that's kind of the sort of what we're going to demonstrate here, Terence. Okay, and then I'm going to put all sorts of safety things in here as well.
Okay, I'm building up some questions here for you.
Okay, great.
We're going to have a little later on. Nothing specifically about that.
Okay, so here's my Apex, right, where I'm running and everything like that. And the first thing I'm going to go do is I would want to set this up. Okay. So that means I'm going to have to do programming.
Lots of programming. I mean, the Apex is all about programming.
Ifs, thens,
I go out on the internet all the time, and everybody keeps telling me, I want to get an Apex, but there's just so much programming to do.
Right. So I'm going to get right into that programming with what do we always talk about, Terence, in every single one of these episodes?
Every Let's Talk Reef is always the first thing we do is go a task.
If you want to go into programming and you want to make it advanced, which I'm going to go into later, I'm on this camera, and you want to go into advanced mode, that's possible, but always start up with the task. Okay,
right.
It's just that clipboard. Okay, we have a task here that's called heater, right, which I'm going to select. Okay, and this just kind of plods around, right? We want to choose an outlet that the heater's plugged into. I'm going to choose the outlet that's called heater, all right, because I've already set this up. I'm going to call it heater, Okay, and then
But that's where you would change it if yours wasn't set up yet.
if
you
it
would
wasn't
change
set
the
up yet,
name.
it's called something generic at that
Okay.
point. And then you'll notice I have a couple temperature probes on my system. Okay,
Okay.
I have a sump temperature probe, and then I have a temperature probe.
So your base temp one, that's the one on the apex. And then
Yes.
you've got a couple other modules that probably have some temp probes in them.
Right, and you do this also for a level of redundancy. So
Sure.
if something were to go wrong with my return pump, right, and water
Mm-hmm.
is no longer flowing up to my aquarium, and I get an alert that my sump temperature is hot or my tank temperature is cold, right, I already know what the problem is.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I have a great number of things here that are going to tell me
What he's
that
trying to
already.
tell you, because he didn't quite explain that
Yeah.
completely, is if you've got two vessels of water and you've got a pump that's moving the water between the two, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so your heater's down below heating the water, and they both should always be the same because it's circulating.
Exactly.
But you could have a you could have a return pump problem, and maybe you don't have the Energy Bar 832. You've got the standard Apex,
Yep.
right, with an Energy Bar 8, and you want to really know when when you're having a problem on your
Right.
tank. Boy, if those temperature probes are different,
So if I get an alert on one but not on the other,
right?
I know what's going on already.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I control based on the temperature probe that is in my sump, okay? So I'm going to select sump temp there, and then I'm just going to basically choose those ranges that we said. So I said 77.5, and I said turn off at 78.1, okay? I'm going to hit next.
You're a programmer.
Yeah, and I just did some intense coding, man.
Yeah, I know.
Right? And then I would send that off to my Apex, okay?
Now you can do this on any tablet, any phone. It's the same interface everywhere. You don't have to plug it in from a computer into
No,
the
no,
Apex.
it's
Nothing,
on
right?
your phone. It doesn't.
I know a lot of you guys are control freaks. You get this already, but a lot of times we get some new people here that aren't familiar with the Apex Fusion interface
Right.
and the devices that you can use. But basically, it's the same on every device. And you don't have to plug a computer into the Apex, and it's going to look the same on everything that you use. So,
And then the next thing I would do, I would just set up the chiller.
Okay.
And I'm just going to do that the same way. I'm going to select this one that says chiller. This would also be fan, and we're just going to kind of go through that in the same way. And this one, I'm not using this outlet here. I don't run
This
a
is where you
chiller
do the
here,
rename, okay.
right? And you could rename it chill. All right. I choose the temperature probe, right? I'll choose my sump temp again, and then I'll set my upper bounds of 78.5, and my lower bounds of 78.1.
okay.
Okay? Or I'm sorry, 77.9 is what
Okay.
I said. So we go next and blah, blah, blah. All right?
Now you've got your
You
fan.
got your dual stage temperature control done. You just put in a couple of numbers. Okay? So the next thing we want to do is alert ourselves. Which
Okay.
remember we said we wanted to see alerts at about 79, 70, it's about 80 degrees and about 76 degrees. And guess what, Terence? There's a task for that
No
too.
way.
Yeah, there's a task for that too. We're just going to go to probe alarm. Okay? I'm going to select the probe. I want to know based on my sump temperature or my tank temperature, right? Rename the probe if I wanted to rename it here.
Okay.
Okay, I select my bounds. I want to know at 80, and I want to know at 76. So I tighten that up a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, and that's it. Send off the alert. Now, if it ever gets above or below that, I'll get an alert. You can set off all your alerts with that probe. Any probe alert.
Any probe,
that
anything.
way,
You have a pH, your salinity, all that. There's no programming. I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly.
just got to use the tasks.
Okay, so now that I've gone through just kind of the plug and chug of that, right? I want to take a look at the, one other thing here in terms of how we can set up and get alerts if this heater is not working appropriately.
Okay.
So one of the things that the EB832 offers, Terence, that you and I both just love, right, is the ability to monitor the watts that something is consuming.
Power monitoring. I believe power monitoring is the most powerful and the most underused thing
Yes.
in people's Apex systems right now.
Absolutely, right? I would say that's bar none. And the first thing that I want to do before I go into the kind of the power monitoring and how to set that alert up is I just want to understand what the power consumption is for my
What
heater.
normal is.
What normal is for my heater, right?
Right.
So I'm going to choose on the graph button here, okay? And then what I'm going to choose is I'm going to choose the chart that I want to, not my ORP13 chart.
Did a water change there, eh?
Yeah. But then click on my heater, right? And then I'm going to zoom in a little bit, okay?
Okay.
So on my heater, right, I can see that, at off is 0 watts. I can see that on is about 91 watts. And I'm going to pick a couple of different peaks there just to make sure that's essentially always about 92, 90 watts or so. This is a 100-watt heater. No heater is going to be 100% efficient. So if you have a 100-watt heater and it's running 90 watts, that's not a problem. You have a 300-watt heater and it's running 280, 275 watts, it's not a problem.
Okay.
It's when it starts running significantly less than that, it's when that contact isn't making contact anymore on the relay, and any number of things like that. The other thing that I find interesting here is I can kind of know exactly how long it is between while my heater runs. So we can see there I have a heater that turned on about 2:20 in the morning. Okay?
Right.
I know you can't see it too well, but that's about what time it turned on. And then it turned off at about 3:40 in the morning.
Okay.
So that tells me that when my heater runs, it runs on average about an hour and a half, you know, any time that it runs, right? So I have a slow raise there. And if you just wanted to also graph my temperature against that, we can do that very easily. And you can see that, hey, there's how my temperature goes. It ranges between about 74.3 to about, 76.3 to about 76.8. That about half a degree that we were talking about earlier. So now that I know my maximum wattage is 90 watts and my tank runs about an hour and a half, I want to set up the alerts for that. And you know how I'm going to do that, Terence?
A task?
No, I'm going to do programming. No, I'm going to run task, okay? And the way we have a task set up for that, it's called the power usage alarm.
Okay.
Okay? So I'm going to select that. And you can't run this task as soon as you set up your Apex. You're going to need to wait for about 2 or 3 days so we can at least let it run. It says the task says at least 24 hours, but really let a couple days of
normal
operation get involved before you run this. Okay? And I'm going to select my heater here. And you can see that this task is already recommended. 0 watts is the minimum, and maximum is 143 watts.
Okay.
That's not quite right, you know, because there's times that when that outlet turns on, right, it's going to take a second before it starts to actually do the actually starts to pull wattage, right? So I'm actually going to go ahead and raise that up to about 50 watts or so using the little slider. So if my heater outlet is on now and it's not pulling at least 48 watts, I know there's a problem.
So this is, you know, it's very common for a lot of heaters to slowly go bad, right? And all of a sudden your temperatures aren't keeping up where they need to keep up. This is a way to know that your heater is failing before your heater fails. And we get a lot of customers that tell us that they do use this part for their heaters.
And then the same thing is the maximum. I know that my maximum heater wattage is about 90 watts. So I'm going to set that a couple of watts higher than that. And typically you're going to go run higher on a heater wattage if there's actual physical breakage and there's water contact and the electrical contacts are coming together. Right? You're going to start getting shorting and things like that. We do a next, we send it off, and we just did some serious programming again.
Okay. One question around that we just got in. How can you modify those if you've already had them? Do you just go rerun the task?
Just rerun the task.
Yeah.
That's it. Once you rerun the task, it's modified. There are other ways you can fine-tune this if you don't want to go through the whole task, but the task just makes it easier anyways.
Right.
So, and the task just kind of guides you to where you're going without having to jump around a whole bunch of different places. Okay. So, any other questions?
There's a couple, but I'm going to let you get through what you're getting through, and then I'm going to.
You know where I'm going.
I know where you're going, of course. So I got to circle back so I don't get you too off track.
So so finally, now I'm going to go to my heater outlet. Okay, you can see it's a little bit different just because I'm doing something different. But now, I want to add some even more advanced features. So I have the temperature alert set up on my Apex. I have the wattage alert set up on the heater. Okay. I can even add a little bit more.
So more safety.
Yes.
Right.
One of those things.
More redundancy.
The way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to switch this over to advanced mode. Okay, and now you can.
Now we are in code.
Now we're in code.
We're in code. So if you're scared of code, close your eyes right now and go like this. Okay.
So one thing that can happen is the temperature probe can come out of the water when you're doing service and things like that. The heater could come out of the water.
It's very common for people when they're doing service or the cat pulls it out or something, and immediately the temperature of your tank becomes the ambient temperature of your room.
Right. So one thing I typically like to do is I like to add a second off statement down here at the bottom, and it's just that it would be a temperature that's not really possible.
So that's because if your temperature probe is outside your sump, it's going to be the ambient room temperature. Your heater is going to think, hey, I'm at 72 degrees. We need more heat. And it adds more heat, and it says we're still at 72 degrees. Add more heat. Okay.
And so basically, your heater is just running.
It'll just run forever, right?
Yeah. And in this
or if you pick the wrong temperature probe, right? And you don't have the wrong temperature input,
Yes.
and you don't have a temperature probe there, it's going to read like, what, 23 degrees or something.
Exactly.
And your heater will be on forever.
Exactly. So it's a good idea just to put a statement just a couple degrees below your on statement that if it ever gets below 74, then also just
You know what I'm
turn it
going to
off.
do?
What?
I'm going to tell engineering to put that in the task.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to make them do something, huh? Anyways, so that's something there. And then the final thing I want to add. So, Terence, we've stressed this a lot today. When you have a titanium heater, what do we want to avoid?
What do we want to avoid with a titanium heater?
We
Going
wanna-
out of the water, dry?
Well, that's true, but really what we want to avoid is running one without an internal thermostat.
Oh, what I talked about earlier.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. How many
Do
people
not do that.
Do not do that. Now, I know for a fact that there are people that
Oh,
do
there's
this.
somebody on here already that
Who's
said,
saying
I
that-
have 2 of them on my Apex right now.
Right. So there is a way to protect you.
So maybe in the interim,
while
before
you're
they-
waiting for the 2-day shipping from whoever, right? Or you can't get to local fish store
Because
until the
you're snowed in.
weekend because you're snowed in. This is what you can do in the interim. There is a great statement that we added in a previous Elisa firmware not too long ago called the WIN statement.
Okay.
The WIN statement is essentially a safety programming statement.
Okay.
It's available both on Apex and Apex Classics. So new feature for Apex Classics that we're still improving that product.
Oh, no, that can't be.
But we're not leaving you guys behind, and anything that we can add to it, we do.
We do.
Okay, and this is a perfect example of that. And what it essentially does is it turns an outlet permanently on or off based on the outlet's runtime. So for example, if an outlet shouldn't run any longer than, let's say, 5 minutes, okay, and it does run longer than 5 minutes, it then could turn it permanently off.
Okay.
Okay. You can also receive alerts if the outlet goes into this state as well, and we call this an error state. It needs
permanently. Sorry, I'm still
Yeah,
trying to
yeah,
get this. So permanently on off means that it's not in auto mode anymore.
It's not in that programming mode anymore. So
Okay.
it permanently turns the outlet off. Let's say.
So if you want, then you have to move it back to auto.
So if it were to go into this error state, if things just have gone so wrong, this outlet should have never stayed on that long. It could be used for an auto top off. It could be used for a heater in this situation that we're speaking about today.
Okay.
You would have to have human intervention to put it back into auto.
Okay.
Do you understand? And finally, like I said, you can use an error so you can get an alert so at least hey, that outlet manually got turned off because I used this WIN statement. Okay. Essentially, the way it looks to get into syntax, because it's not good enough. WIN, on, off, time, minute, second, then on, off. Or if, and in the error context, the name of the outlet in error state, then on.
Okay.
So
we are in advanced mode now, just so you guys
in
know.
advanced mode,
This is.
It happened. Okay. We did do programming.
Hey, we know a lot of you guys want this and you ask for this kind of stuff, so that's why Paul is here to give us not just the stuff that makes it easy with doing tasks, but also when you want to take it to some next level stuff.
Right. And I do want to also emphasize how much we have already done in terms of safety of this outlet before we even had to get to this point. Okay? So the way that you would program that in this situation, we talked about how long my heater is normally on. It's normally on for an hour and a half. Okay? So that means that, let's say if it ever were to run 3 hours, I would know that
it never
should
needs
never
that
happen,
much.
right? It should never happen, right? So I would say when, all right, then I would say the statement on, okay, is greater than 180 minutes, then off. So what that is saying is when this outlet is on for more than 180 minutes, turn this outlet off.
And it turns it to off.
Yes.
It's not just turn it off, it's turn it off. It actually, like if somebody physically put their finger on there and slid it over to the off.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this means that you should kind of only reserve this
It's just in a state where you don't want anything else to happen until you actually can check out to see what's going on.
Human intervention is required.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, absolutely.
So I could update this, right? Which I'll go ahead and do that. All right, success. Now I want to receive a email alert based on that. Okay, and it's alphabetical.
So this is an alert based on the when statement.
Right. So I already have it there. I say if error heater equal then
Perfect.
on. Right. So I'm saying if it goes into that when statement, send me an alert because
Now, if
things
you
don't
guys get
run.
stuck with any of this, that's why we have the community forum, and we also have the official Neptune Systems Facebook group. So be sure to go out there, use those resources, because there's tons of people. I already see some of them commenting here and giving great suggestions for running 2 heaters, running lag and back and forth. Also, shout out here to Rami from Blue Seas. I just saw him pop in here.
Hey, Rami.
Shout out here to Marcin, who I showed his tank earlier. Marcin's here giving some great tips on some of these fans that are out there. And we've got some people asking about virtual outlets. And if you can do it now, Paul, on the fly, I'll talk about how I do one thing with heaters with virtual outlets that I love to do. So
Okay.
I don't change my temperature that much on my tank as far as change the settings in my Apex. But I do change it, usually twice a year, right? In the winter, I run it a little cooler. In the summer, I run it a little bit warmer. But when you have multiple things that you all want to follow the same, beat, basically, you want them to march in step. You can use a virtual outlet to do that. And in the case of temperature control, right, you can have a virtual outlet that is where you control the temperature, right? And the heaters actually listen to that as if it's its parent, right? They're
Right.
like a child, right? Is that something you want to get into here, or you want to get in a little later?
I mean, I could. Essentially, what.
But anyway, to start, let me start off one thing, the virtual outlet, right?
Right.
So a virtual outlet is not an outlet, okay? It is just that. It's virtual, but it can act just like an outlet. So you can add temperature commands to it. You can add all sorts of different things into that and programming into that outlet, right?
Yeah, and essentially the way you do that is you come to your outlet configuration page, you add a virtual outlet, you name it. I'm going to name it
Master heat or something.
temp control.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so I've got this outlet named temp control now. All right.
Now you can actually copy the programming from that other heater into temp control, huh?
Exactly.
Using the copy. There's a copy methodology. So if you have something set up and configured on one outlet and you want another outlet to use it, all you need to do is copy it.
All right, so here's this temp control outlet, okay? And then I want to copy my heater control that I currently have, and I'm sorry.
You didn't
I
save it.
went a little fast there. I did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
So then I'm in temp control, okay? And then if I want to copy it, I hit this button right up here, okay? I then select the heater out. Oh, it's not there. That's what you get for going on the fly.
Yeah, we go on the fly.
And so then you could create your if temp statements here, right? And just like I
Right.
did. And then actually where the heater is set up, so you have multiple heaters is what
Correct.
this is really useful for, so you don't have to go to every heater
That's
every
the
time
point.
you want
Yes,
to change the
you
control.
change one, and they all follow that one. You
Right,
make
and
one
then-
virtual outlet.
You get rid of essentially all this,
All that code goes away
okay?
because you're not
And-
individually controlling each heater. That heater is now going to follow the master, right?
So
The-
let's say
the
I got
parent.
rid of all that, right? And I'm going to say if output temp control equals on, then on. Okay? The benefit of this too is if you have multiple heaters and you don't want them all to run at the same time, the next statement you're going to use is the defer statement. All right? So what defer would be is I'm going to maybe defer the second heater for
Oh, this is the lag thing.
for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay? So
Wow, this is super advanced stuff.
Okay.
So you guys that asked for advanced stuff,
So
I'm going to go all OSA. So you guys that asked for all the advanced stuff, right? You're getting it right now. Paul is laying it
right.
down.
So essentially now what happens is so I got all that ready. So this temperature control outlet essentially turns the outlet on. Okay, this is not the exact syntax either, guys, if you're trying to copy this. And then if this was my second heater, I only want this second heater to kick on if the first one hasn't done the job in 20 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, and then at the point that this temp control outlet's now been on for a period of 20 minutes, the second heater would turn on.
Okay.
And then maybe if I had a third heater, I put a 30-minute delay on the third heater. So after the first two heaters still don't get the job
now
done.
I'm lost.
Boom, we
Okay.
had another
That's
one.
too much for me.
But again, the only place that we have to go and set any of the actual temp variables is inside that virtual temperature control
temp.
outlet. All right, totally geeked out.
Yeah, totally. But another cool thing with that too is like, let's say you're gonna do maintenance on your sump and you just want to shut off all your heaters because you
Yeah.
don't want them exposed to air. You don't have to go to each individual one.
And turn them all. You just
You
hit,
just hit off on that master virtual outlet and you're good to go.
You put the maintenance cycle inside that.
Now
temp
we're really
control
getting there.
outlet.
Now
So,
we're really getting there.
all right.
All right, let me see if there's any other questions here. Power monitoring, yeah. Lots of positivity here. I like that, guys. You know what's crazy? Hardly any. What about the Trident comments?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I think
guess maybe you hit that pretty good.
there's hardly any of those. So that's good. I think everybody knows it.
You'll see. I have my Trident measurements on here, right? I just did a water change, and so we have some high numbers right here. Don't be too concerned about that calcium number right now. It's actually very precise if you look at the line. I just haven't calibrated my Trident recently, so it's reading just a little bit low. I can say once I get a calibration standard and say what the water is.
Well, there's a bunch of work that we're doing on a lot of the UI and stuff still in this part of the NSI that we're tweaking. Hey, one of the things I did not mention is we always like to give away some swag. So I've got, obviously our Control Freak t-shirts. And one of the things I'm going to do on this one is if you guys hung out till now to the very last minute, any of the people who are on here in the last 10 minutes before we close off, those are the only people that are going to be qualified for this.
I like it.
So put in your comments right now if you want to qualify for swag. Those comments are the ones that are going to get put in for the, roll the dice on.
Good.
So I'll have this. I'll have, I don't know, Paul knows what most of the stuff is out there because Paul runs that show. We got towels.
We've got t-shirts, towels.
We've got some glasses from shot glasses, other things out there.
Fun things.
And I'll pick a couple of people to get some swag and make it fun and make it so you guys know that only if you hang out to the end with Terence and Paul do you actually get some of the free swag. So put those comments in, put those questions in, and see what you can win. Again, we're going to have our next episode of Let's Talk Reef 2 weeks from today at 5 p.m., 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to do it hopefully every 2 weeks like that. Sometimes things get in the way. People have vacations, we have business trips, we have other things. If those happen, I've kind of committed for myself to, even if I'm not here at the office, we're going to find a way to bring you at least some ad hoc Let's Talk Reef action. I know I've got some exciting things coming up in some of the trips that I have out to various places around the country already, but a lot of these shows that I talked about, I'm hoping that we're going to put together a Let's Talk Reef sofa at least 3 or 4 of those events, so you can come. Even I'll say, hey, why don't you come over here on the sofa and talk to us about your reef?
Yeah.
So that'll be really fun.
You just started that at
Reefapalooza, California.
It went really well.
Yeah, we interviewed a lot of the people from
a lot of vendors and things like that, and I think we love doing these live streams with you guys.
It's fun. It's fun, and we know you guys appreciate it, all the comments and everything, and keep looking out there for the Trident stuff. Help us out on the social media if you know something from seeing it here. I got to do a lot of typing out there, guys. So any of it that you can answer for me, I love that.
Hey, how much do reagents cost, Terence?
Yeah, exactly. How much do okay, reagents. The 2 month supply is going to be around $40.
Right, exactly.
Okay? So there, we say that all the time. When's it coming out?
We don't know. As soon as possible.
As soon as we possibly can get it out the door.
It's going great, though. The NSI, just to add to what Terence was saying, is those guys are super dedicated, and the most exciting part about it is we are the exact precision we've been seeing here. We're seeing out there too.
Yes.
And I think that's the thing that gives us the.
We got a lot of work still to do in making sure that thing is a great product for everybody before we can drop it in a box and send it out to you. But we're not talking years here. We're talking months.
Yeah.
So and we've got everything lined up so we can build them, Paul. I mean,
I know.
We do.
I know.
So. I'm really excited about it. All right, guys, until next time, again, February 12th at 5 p.m., 8 p.m. Eastern Time. That's it for now from Let's Talk Reef. Thanks for joining us, and enjoy those fish.
Thanks, guys.